Good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, November 4th, 2018, and it is Browns game day again. We're playing the Chiefs this week, and they've got one of actually the highest powered offense, I believe, in the NFL right now, if not one of the most powerful offenses in the NFL right now. So it's going to be quite the showdown, I think, if our defense shows up today like they have been. The keys to the game today are going to be containing Tyreek Hill and Mahones and Kareem Hunt, because he's been known to take off. Positives for the Browns is Rashard Higgins and Antonio Callaway, both who were possibly questionable with injury designations. They are both active today, which will have Higgins, Callaway, and Landry all on the field for Baker Mayfield at the same time today, along with Nick Chubb. And maybe, just maybe, we will see Duke Johnson for more than 2 plays today. Wouldn't that be something to see? One of the big stories for the Browns this week has been the historic matchup between Baker Mayfield and Patrick Mahomes in 2016 when Oklahoma played Texas Tech in Lubbock, and they had their historical scoring night with Mayfield coming out ahead 66-59 at the end of the night. Let's take a look at both of their stats from that night right here. As you can see, this was a record-setting, high-powered offensive game. Mahomes threw the ball 88 times and rushed it 12 times. That gives him 100 plays total for himself for the whole game. That's a lot, especially for a guy in college. So, hopefully we'll see some more of that magic today. However, with the Browns lacking a true number one wideout, I think that'll be a little difficult for them to pull off. But we'll see what happens if our defense shows up today and Mayfield can get creative and get Duke Johnson involved in the offense. Maybe we'll actually see a running game today. Wouldn't that be something to see too? The Browns might have a chance, but it's all going to come down to scoring ahead and staying ahead. And the Browns haven't been able to do that all year. So unless they could do that today, I don't see a real good chance for us to win this game. But as a diehard Browns fan, I'm always the eternal optimist. So, go Browns. Greg Williams sure is an early riser. The Browns' new interim head coach was seen walking into the building at about 7:45 this morning, over 5 hours before kickoff. From what I understand and from what I've been able to read around the internet, this is his reputation. He's always been one to show up early. So hopefully this shows his dedication and commitment to the team, and hopefully we'll get some protection for Baker Mayfield today, and we'll get a running game going to take some stress off, and maybe we might not see any interceptions today. That would be great. The other reason that this game today is a big deal is because we are going to see the team that John Dorsey built versus the team that John Dorsey is building now. Okay? John Dorsey was the GM in Kansas City. For those of you that didn't know that, you'd have to live under a rock or something to not know that. But John Dorsey being a GM in Kansas City, he built one hell of a team, and you're seeing what he can build right now live in action this year in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. So, Browns fans, even if we don't win today, pay close attention to what Kansas City does and how they play, because those type of players is most likely what you're going to see John Dorsey bring to Cleveland. And hopefully, just hopefully, he can build us a high-powered offense around Baker Mayfield like Kansas City has done around Patrick Mahomes. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver for the Chiefs, said that he was a fan of Browns safety Jabril Peppers in college, and today he's interested in seeing how fast he really is. So that might be an interesting matchup to watch. The last thing that I wanted to touch on this morning is how Myles Garrett and Baker Mayfield have really been stepping up and becoming the young leaders that this Cleveland Browns locker room really, really, really needs bad. With all the drama that's went on this week, you haven't really seen either one of them fazed by it in their interviews. Myles Garrett is focused on moving forward. Baker Mayfield is focused on moving forward. And it sounds like neither one of them is really that hurt that Hugh Jackson is gone. Like, we got along with him while he was here, but now he's gone. He's not here, so we don't really care what goes on with Hugh Jackson. And from what I understand, Myles Garrett really didn't care for his little redemption tour around ESPN, trying to deflect the blame off of himself and saying it was all Sashi Brown's fault, or it was all Jimmy Haslam's fault, or it was all Paul De Podesta's fault, or it was all Bernie Kosar's fault, or whoever in the heck he wants to blame this week. I mean, I really think Browns fans are just sick of Hugh Jackson and just want him to go away, but he won't. And the fact that he led us through the last 2 seasons to one of the crappiest records in NFL history, including a season where we didn't win a single game, Hugh Jackson is not going to go out of the conversation for a while, because every time something bad happens, we're going to remember, oh yeah, this is like Hugh Jackson's running the team again. And that's just going to stick in the heads of Browns fans for years and years and years to come, unless John Dorsey, Baker Mayfield, Myles Garrett, these teams' leaders can, well, first of all, it centers around John Dorsey finding the right head coach to work with Baker Mayfield. And then the coach and his offensive leader in Baker Mayfield and his defensive leader in Myles Garrett can come together and get this team inspired and winning like we all would love to see as diehard Browns fans. All right, guys, this is a segment that I'm going to be throwing on the end of my Sunday morning Browns Talk sessions. This is my fantasy football team for this year. Take a look at my roster. Here's my starting lineup for this week. I'm starting Tom Brady at quarterback, Tariq Cohen and Nick Chubb at running back, Antonio Brown and Mike Thomas, wide receivers, Travis Kelce at tight end. I'm starting John Brown in my flex this week. I was starting Sterling Shepard there for most of the year, but after Ingram came back from his injury and his targets went down, so did his fantasy points. And in order to fill some other needs on my team, I had to let him go and drop him to waivers. I had high hopes for Jacksonville's defense this week. They're normally my weekly defensive starters. But they're on a bye this week, so I snagged up the Chargers defense off of waivers just to have somebody there to fill the gap pretty much. And my kickers all season has been Stephen Gostkowski of the Patriots, and he's been fairly consistent, which is why I drafted him in the first place. Big problem for my team this year. Our record's not that great. We actually have a losing record, but a lot of that revolves around the fact that Leonard Fournette has not really done anything this year, and he was my number 1 pick. I had high hopes for him after last season, and these hamstring injuries that he's been dealing with this year really kind of screwed me. Also, Matt Ryan going off a few weeks when Tom Brady just had turned in some mediocre fantasy numbers hurt me. But as you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players on a bye this week. That includes both of my Indianapolis Colts players, my Jacksonville running backs, and their defense. So let's take a look at my opponent for this week. As you can see, he already got some decent points out of George Kittle the other night on Thursday Night Football. Nobody saw that coming. Apparently he did, or he started him because he needed him to for a bye week. I'm not exactly sure, but this is what my fantasy matchup looks like for this week. And when we come back tomorrow with the Monday Browns Talk, I will update you on where everything's at. I don't believe, it doesn't look like either one of us have a Monday night game this week. So all this should be wrapped up by tomorrow night. And I should be able to show you guys the game results on Monday's edition of Browns Talk. And I just wanted to introduce it this week. Next week, throughout the week, I'm going to follow some of the fantasy news and adjust my roster as the week goes on and show you guys how I do that and how I come to the conclusions of adding the players that I add or cutting who I cut and who I put in the starting lineup and who I take out and why. And I'll also analyze my opponent from now on for the rest of the season here on out, because in order for me to have any shot at winning the money out of this fantasy league, I need to win out and sweep the playoffs. And it has to start this week. As you can see, my projected point total is a little bit lower than my opponent's this week. So we're going to have to count on hopefully AB going off, or possibly Cohen going off, or Chubb going off against a crappy Chiefs defense. That would be, holy crap, the Browns would love that. I was starting Carlos Hyde, I want to note that, for most of the season until he was traded to Jacksonville. Since then, his fantasy value has dropped drastically, so I had to cut him. But here's the fantasy lineup for this week, and like I said, stay tuned, and we'll analyze this game tomorrow on Browns Talk, and throughout the week I will adjust my roster and explain to you why, and get into depth with how I play fantasy football. So enjoy the game today. Hopefully it turns out better than the rest of us are expecting it to. And I'll be back this evening with a post-game report. Until next time, this is Roadblock with the Browns channel, and I'm gone!